Climify is independent of climate designers. The views expressed on Climify are solely those of the host, Eric Benson, and guests of each episode, and do not represent the views of the climate designers. Let's be real. The status quo has created a lot of the world's problems, and we can't rely on business as usual to get us out of this mess we're in. That's why we're partnering with Think NATO this season. It's a dead simple 4-step process to blow open conventional thinking and get to truly unique and innovative ideas. It's not about finding the perfect answer. It's about starting with the right questions, pushing the edges, and then taking action. You can learn more about Think NATO at thinknato.com. That's ThinkNADO.com. Think NATO, the positive action engine. Hey, it's Eric. Welcome to this week's episode of Climify. Today's guest is Jenny Morgan, who I met back in September of 2024 on LinkedIn, where she shared with me her new book, Cancel Culture and Climate. We had an interesting conversation there, and I kept her name in my back pocket should what she was writing about become important for the show. So, when climate optimism became this season's theme, I logged back into LinkedIn and asked her to be on the show. Our conversation today was a really interesting one for me and something I truly needed after the last 4 or 5 months of trying to figure out what happened in the November 2024 US elections. I really hope that it's something that is helpful for you as well. But before we get there, who's Jenny? Jenny Morgan is a dedicated advocate for sustainable change. She has expertise in corporate social responsibility, social and environmental impact, and the B Corps movement. Her passion lies in creating lasting positive impact and fostering collaboration within the climate movement. She's a public speaker and climate strategist. She's engaged thousands of individuals, and she's helped to inspire true climate action and meaningful contributions to fight against climate change. Her new book, Cancel Culture and Climate, is out now, and you can get it over at cancelcultureclimate.com. Jenny lives in the Pacific Northwest with her husband, 2 children, and their 2 large dogs. You can connect with her over at LinkedIn at Jenny C. Morgan. I really hope you enjoy my conversation with Jenny. Jenny, welcome. Welcome to Climify. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And your new book, Cancel Culture and Climate, looks really good. I have an advanced digital copy here that you sent me, so very, very excited about that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been so fun this year to be just talking to people about it and getting feedback on it. And so it's just been a really amazing journey thus far. So thank you.
Well, one of the reasons why you are here is kind of the unique perspective you're bringing through that book and your work around climate action. So I'm interested in you sharing with us how you ended up walking down this particular climate path.
Yeah, I mean, this was honestly very personal for me at first because I'm not new to feeling uh, extreme forms of frustration and an overwhelming sense of urgency. Those are all things that I have and do experience. And so I wasn't always pursuing this type of solution in optimism. I was really trying to just figure out what solutions work and trying to promote that work.
Hmm.
And then as I started to kind of tackle, I talk about dichotomous thinking in the book, this kind of all or nothing, black and white type of thinking. And that's something that I've struggled with personally my whole life. And as I was thinking about that more and seeing it a lot in the climate space, I wanted to be a voice and really help individuals be a strong advocate for creating bridges and bridging divides and really trying to explore perspectives. And so as I started to somewhat navigate my way through this and test it out myself, I started to see that this topic really resonated with other people as well. And I'm not the first to talk about it. I just kind of named it. And so I think that a lot of people are seeing this in the movement and have experienced it. And so I wanted to be a voice and really provide tools and frameworks and tactics that we can apply to our daily lives so that we can actually move this forward. So I live and breathe this environment every day, and
Hmm.
I want to really figure out a way to navigate through it.
Was there like a particular example that you can point to where, there's this cancel culture meets climate that really sets you off?
Yeah, the origin of the book really started with trying to tackle cancel culture inside the movement itself
Right.
because different solutions tend to use shame as a tactic when they feel fearful about losing funding or losing the narrative in some way. And
Hmm.
so I started to see very like-minded individuals and organizations use shame against one another. It's kind of this form of cannibalism happening inside of the movement. And so that was really the beginning of where I really wanted to talk about this type of communication barrier. And as I started talking about it more and more, I see it so widespread. I mean, we can think about it on different political ideologies, different solutions we like, you know, things that we're prioritizing if we care more about social impact over environmental impact, like all of these choices that we feel as if we are being forced to make. And it's, in my opinion, and in the evidence that we actually don't need to make a choice. It's a yes and type of movement. And
Hmm.
so that's really where I then started just doing so much research and creating case studies and talking about it and getting real life experiences from people so that I can actually put a playbook forward so that we can work our way through it. But I mean, I feel like I've experienced this type of culture for such a long time when I worked in DEI before and now in tech. It's very prevalent in all sections of purpose and business and community.
Yeah, I definitely experienced it this summer, and not for the first time, but really in an extreme way. And it happened. Obviously, it was a very tumultuous summer with the election and everything, and people were very heated about a lot of different global events. And I was sort of singled out as, why aren't you doing this too? I don't know if we can really consider you part of the climate movement because of you not doing this. And I was like, well, who's to say, wait a second here. Who's to say that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong? I do like your comment about yes and that's in the world of improv, right? That's like the best way to keep things going and keep things interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to the situation that you're referring to over the summertime, I'm sure that didn't evoke a motivated type of attitude to really think about their feedback and integrate new behaviors that they were trying to inspire you to do. It doesn't work. And so
Yeah.
that's that I want to do things that work and this works. And so that's why I've dedicated the last few years trying to just help others make it work too.
Do you think then that like that polarization, or I've heard like the term purity test thrown out a lot in this movement. Do you think that's a really big obstacle for things to not move forward as fast as possible?
I think it's our biggest obstacle,
Okay.
because I mean we've got climate action pretty figured out. I mean, there's going to be some technical advancements that need to happen, and there's going to have to be some innovations that occur. But we have a good sense of what needs to be done to drastically curb climate change
Mhm.
and really see 100 years from now, the world could look like a completely different place based on our actions that we do today.
Correct.
And so there isn't really, it's not like we're all scratching our heads wondering what we should do. We know what to do. And so it's really more so about engagement and inspiration and motivation and really creating this movement to be a collective movement rather than again, I kind of talk about the choice. This isn't a choice. It's something that we all care about and we all have an opportunity to help push forward. And so being able to really explain that in a way that makes people feel seen and heard, people or people in companies, that's it really does pose a challenge for us to be able to promote progress. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of stay where we are. I think the hill is pretty steep already. I'm not
Yeah, it
here to
is.
try to help it get even steeper. So,
No,
yeah.
humans are our own worst enemy in this case. Just the interpersonal relationships are getting in the way of 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 the real actions that need to be done.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing that you want to do is make someone feel defensive or
Yeah.
have to rely on their ego to survive a conversation or go against their tribe. There's all these very human behavioral things that are happening in the movement, and we need to first be aware of them and then figure out how to navigate through them.
I definitely felt defensive in that particular, and it wasn't just that one particular incident. There were others kind of connected to this, and yeah, I mean, it made me reflect. It made me reflect on, like, should I be doing that? And I was thinking, well, I'm doing this stuff over here. They don't even know that. So, like, why are they just pinpointing this one thing? So I definitely reflected at least. I don't know if that's something that you see too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel empathetic towards you in that situation and towards the individual. And I don't know the details, of course, but it to me, when we use those, take it just from a personal conversation, it's a scary time, and so
Yeah.
to be able to stand on a soapbox and preach about something and show data and rely on facts or the latest NPR episode that you've listened to or something, that makes us feel like we're part of something, and that's really important to feel stability in a very unstable time, and so being able to recognize when those shame and blame mechanisms are being used, whether internally or externally, being able to see them when they're happening can really empower a real conversation so that instead of feeling defensive, you could ask a question to explore more. And then they're kind of starting to put their guard down. And vice versa. Maybe they would then ask you a question of, well, have you considered doing this additional thing? And then you could explain why. Now we're both sharing where we are in our journey and how much time and resources we have available. It's a real conversation now versus just a tennis match of, who knows more and who can say it best.
Is there like a really famous, like in the news example of how this sort of cancel culture has affected climate that you can point to?
I mean, in the news, there's so much shame being used right now, just especially in the United States. We can actually see cancel culture mechanisms happening. We've somewhat lost the narrative. And so it is happening in real time where, there's a lot of symptoms of this type of behavior happening where organizations are hushing their impacts, they're recanting their impacts. I mean, these are all
Yeah.
symptoms of this type of behavior. I mean, I just recently this wasn't in the news, but I just recently heard feedback about various locations where climate projects are located and how they're deemed controversial. And so I've been kind of pushing back on that. And I've been using a hypothetical example of if there was a climate project based in Russia and you could save 1 million people by doing it, and no funding is going to go to the administration there. It's not going to
Yeah.
prove any sort of, human rights violation or anything of that sort. It's just that's where it's based. I would say a significant portion of people would not engage in it. It's based in Russia. And I find that to be terrifying because we're limiting the opportunity to learn and explore and seeing good in things. And I I really think that this type of behavior on all sides, and that's more of a climate centric focus, but then, on those that are typically blamed for most pollution, they're not seeing themselves in this movement either. And so like we're seeing this tribalism, dichotomous thinking, all of these things that are just continuing to divide us when in actuality we have so much in common. So
Right.
I see it all the time inside and outside of the climate movement.
That example from Russia is a good like ethical question, right? And I teach an ethics class in design, and I try to what I see then in a lot of occasions is this like absolutism. Like this is it. This is the absolute. I have a firm thing, and it's yes or no. And it's a lot more of a gray area, slippery slope in ethics in general. But if you're up against someone who's an absolutist, right, it's impossible to change their mind. And I've run into that in the climate movement, and it's really challenging. I agree with you. It's super challenging.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon just launched a new platform to trade carbon credits, and, that's getting a lot of attention,
I
both
didn't know that.
positively. Yes, that there's a breaking news, and so, it's, to me, I think that that is incredible because it's a big company. Using shame isn't going to have Amazon just shut their doors. That's not going to work. So
No, no.
we're actually seeing progress and funding and growth. And whether you believe, whether you agree with everything that Amazon does, or whether you agree with the voluntary carbon market being the best source of a solution, it's more about, is there more growth and opportunity happening? And if so, great. What can we do to improve the things that might be holding us back? And so
Yeah.
it's that curiosity that's so important, because once we lose that, then we lose opportunity. And
Mhm.
right now is a time that everyone needs to be coming together to really push this movement forward. And so don't divide, come together and figure out what's next.
Yeah, how do we do that? How do we encourage that collaboration and even tolerance within the climate movement?
Yeah, I talk so in the book, I talk about various frameworks that you can use. I've kind of broken the movement into 3 different personas. So
Okay.
I've got the very passionate climate activist that tends to cancel others, and then I have the sustainability professional that feels very confused and is lacking confidence. There's so much noise, and they're not really sure how they should behave, how much to talk about it. They're just really lacking that level of confidence. And then you've got the other persona of a company or individual that has been canceled and they're looking to rebuild and reemerge. And so all of these have different tactics and frameworks that I've flushed out in the book and when I speak about it. But really what it comes to is being open and having a genuine dialogue, because if you're y- using questions to explore perspectives, now you're gaining more understanding. So if you're talking to a business that's not doing exactly what you want them to do, I wonder why. Is it cost? Is it
Yeah.
resources? Is it tech? What's the challenge, so that we can actually, it's not about you or me. It's about, what's this obstacle? The obstacle is the challenge, not the other person or other entity.
I think when we first met, gosh, was it a month or two ago about this podcast? I think in our conversation around this idea of collaboration, I thought we talked about a little bit around game theory, and that's a really potentially smart way to engage in these conversations better in that, hey, we have the same goals in the end to win the game on climate, and we need to get there together. And that to me resonates really, really well. Is that something that you also agree with, or?
I agree with it wholeheartedly, and I've seen it work. I was speaking I talk about this in the book too, but I was speaking with a individual that seemed pretty put off that they were now going to be responsible for the climate strategy for the business that they were working in, and so
Mm.
they were just lots of sighing and kinda, like, eye rolling and
Oh, no.
just it felt like it was just a bummer to be there, and they felt that way too, and so I kinda just stopped and started just talking about what they care about and what they do every day, and so then I started to understand, well, why are they bummed out to have this conversation? What level of stress are they feeling by now being responsible for this? It's not because they think climate is a joke. They actually think it's really challenging to navigate their job now, and they're feeling an enormous amount of pressure. And so then I said, "Well, where's that pressure coming from?" And I started to actually learn what's the challenge here. It isn't a difference in opinion. It's actually a difference in just where we think we should go and how much money we should put towards it and how I can still balance all of the other things I'm juggling at the same time, which applies to companies and people. People should have to decide, or they're being kind of forced to decide, should I use cloth diapers or should I be able to buy organic? And so they're feeling
Yeah,
like this enormous amount of pressure when they have so many
I
different things
feel
that they're
it.
juggling.
Yeah, I never had heard, and I'm glad that you did this, like, kinda break it down into these personas, because after you read them off or said them off, I was like, "Oh, I have met every single one of these," and I don't know where I fit in that. I don't know where I am. Maybe I'm in this floating around stage, but, knowing that is actually really helpful. But I do think when listening to you that I think people just need to have more empathy. That seems you're very empathetic, and so I feel like that's very important in these type of conversations to find that middle ground.
Yes, and that is a skill.
It
I've
is. It's a huge skill.
Yeah, my husband and I cackle about how people have said things like that to me where I'm an empathetic person, I'm an optimistic person. We both kinda laugh at that because that's a muscle I am growing, and I'm still
Mhm.
actively growing, and the reason why I'm growing it is because it makes me and the things that I care about stronger, and so I wasn't I think when we talk about empathy and the emotional side of human connection and the emotional side of climate, it often is viewed as like this just bleeding heart, like you're
Yes.
just out there singing and, you're barefoot in the grass. And it's not. It's really about formulating connections and then figuring out ways that we can help each other achieve what we all want, which I strongly believe we all want the same thing. We're just going about it in various different ways.
Yeah, when I was, like, kinda skimming through the different chapters that you shared with me, one thing that I started to think about with myself is I've always it was kind of a point of reflection, really, that I tend to be the person that I mean, maybe, what's the right term here? Am I talking about I tend to find a way to locate a resolution that works for everyone. That's just sort of how I am, and, uh, I don't know what persona that is that in the ones you listed, but when I'm talking to folks in, like, this past summer, it was just super hard to even come to that middle ground, and I guess I'm still developing that empathetic muscle because I was just angry at them. I was not I was not like, "Let's try to understand why you're putting me down." That was not something I was good at that point.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important because using this metaphor of a muscle, sometimes we can be a fitness expert for years and still get an injury.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to know yourself and know when the timing is right. If you aren't feeling equipped to have that empathetic muscle show, it's great to know that now is not the time to engage in a conversation, which is
Yeah.
perfectly fine. And
I
so,
shouldn't have engaged, I guess.
yeah, yeah, because once you step away and then you kind of come back to it, you can actually have a few conversation points that can create a better outcome. But it's very tempting. It's a struggle. I have been privileged enough to spend many years thinking about this and writing about this. So I've been able to kind of cut the corners. I mean, it's very much so helped me this year, just, dealing with all of the noise, and
Yeah.
I I feel the strength in that muscle.
Yeah, can let's pause here and talk about that. Like, what's been going on for you this year, specifically because of there's a lot of turmoil, especially in the US around this.
Yeah, I've heard so like a personal example I would say is there's a lot of anger
Mm.
and confusion,
Mm.
and I've heard a desire from some individuals that are really passionate about equity and peace and safety and climate, all of those things that may come up. They really want to feel validated. They want like a public apology from other people that have potentially helped facilitate the world we live in now, right
Yeah,
at this moment.
yeah, yeah.
And I genuinely empathize with that desire because that would feel good, but how long would it feel good?
Mhm.
Because 'Cause we'd still be here.
In the
And
same spot,
so
yeah.
yeah, and so that's something that, again, with that kinda curiosity, empathy, exploration tool, that can really help us. Okay, I would still be here if I got a formal apology from my uncle. Great. So then what could I actually do to help create a positive bond that moves us forward? Because a lot
Mhm.
of people don't like the way that the world looks right now. No matter how they voted, a lot of people don't like what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it's important to recognize that and then find an opportunity.
Yeah, you mentioned, when we talked before, and I was still shocked by it and still angry by it, just how many people in the climate movement who chose to vote or not vote a particular way when in the end they knew that wouldn't get them to the solution that we all need in climate. And I think I might be still in that I want a public apology type phase. I guess I need to still move past that. But what were some of the reasons you were hearing about why people did what they did?
A lot of it came down to just economics, and people don't see themselves in this movement. A
Hmm.
lot of people don't. A lot of people
Interesting.
don't see themselves in purposeful movements because of the you referenced purity earlier.
Yes.
There's an a level of perfection that is not possible, and it's especially not possible for people that are just learning. And if we don't meet people where they are and have everyone see themselves in these types of movements, then we're gonna just continue to isolate. And then you
Hmm.
kinda get into that, well, I see myself in this group, and this group believes in this. And so I'm gonna just say I believe it too, or I'm just going to ignore it. And so I think if we don't create more conversations to show the wide breadth of what climate action looks like and what climate engagement looks like, then we'll just continue to shove people out. And this is a movement that everyone needs to be a part of, whether it's not having plastic straws. Like if someone's into going, they just bought their first metal plastic straw or metal straw, then great. Like that a great step forward.
Mhm.
And then we can start talking about other things that can have a greater impact. So I just think it's so important to be a bit patient in this time of urgency.
It reminds me of a guest that I had in the 3rd season, Andrea Learned, who said, "Fame, not shame." So, fame that person that got the made that good move and not shame them because they're not perfect.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to be a hero in the story, so
Yeah.
let's create more heroes.
The hero's journey. That was the whole Star Wars thing, right? The hero's journey. That's how it was written.
Yeah, I mean, if I had written this book for Anakin, imagine what would have happened. I mean, the whole
Our
thing would have
world
been.
would be better. Jenny, why didn't you think of this?
I know, I know.
I think it's a challenge because we are fighting against just a lot of our human psychology, and we tend to stereotype people. We tend I'm in the creative field and design, and unfortunately, we seem to point out the one negative thing despite 99% of it being positive in this beautiful thing that was created, and we'll find that one thing, "Oh, missed a period." And I don't know if that's just human nature all around, but I think that's just like a wall that we have to get through.
Yeah, I think we can all somewhat skew to the negative. And so if we know that about ourselves and about others, we can really intentionally keep the steering wheel away from that so that we don't dip
Mhm.
into that behavior. And it's a daily effort.
Yeah, I think the what I've been hearing so far is a lot of these, like, personal interactions and daily things that we do. How scalable do you think this framework is that you're working on to move beyond just, like, the one-on-ones to a larger mass movement?
I think it's incredibly scalable. So I think one thing I like to talk about is we talk about companies a lot, but
Mhm.
companies are people.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that so much. We're like, I can't believe ExxonMobil is doing this and, whatever, whoever we're attacking at that time. It's often a company that we talk about. And that's actually 5 individuals that went into a room and they made a decision and they, crafted the outcome of where we are now. And so I think it's so important to remember that companies are made of people. And so if we can engage people, that then also engages companies and governments. And so I do think it is very scalable. I'm not saying that you should, put everything down, go outside your house and just say like, are you a climate denier? And then you start, having a debate with someone. That's definitely
Yeah.
not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you can come to conversations with an open mind and a sense of curiosity and empathy, the world opens up with opportunities. And for me
Mhm.
personally, that tactic has literally just for me as one person has unlocked millions upon millions of dollars towards climate impact just by me taking a little bit of time to listen, hear people's perspectives, and then engage them in the movement. And it works.
Millions of dollars. Tell me more about this.
Anytime someone is curious about ways that they can get involved in the movement, but they don't see themselves in it, I'm always trying to find ways to help them then see themselves in this movement. And so if people care about conservation, if they care about global warming, if they care about any sort of climate resiliency, whatever that might be, you can
Mhm.
help provide whatever that solution might be. So for me personally, I work in a field where we prevent non CO2 gases from entering the atmosphere. And it's highly impactful. It helps curb climate change today. And so there's a lot of organizations that are confused on how they see themselves in the movement. And so by me just taking the time to hear that, I've been able to share solutions that are able to
Oh, great.
address climate change today. And they would not be part of this solution if they were continued to be shamed or blamed or told that they're they're the evil side of it.
Mm.
I mean, I think of Tesla right now. Tesla, great.
Great
I'm
example.
Yeah, like, I think of, and I have no affiliation with Tesla, nor have I spoken with them, but think about what's happening in the news with Tesla for the company
It's crazy.
and for people.
Hmm.
That's a lot of cancel culture right there. I mean, people are lighting other people's cars on fire, and
Uh-huh.
these are people that are most likely on the side of climate. And so, I mean, it's a perfect example of climate cancel culture in the news because it's attacking people, then it's also attacking a company that is it's problematic right now
Mm.
due to an individual.
Right.
But then if you also look, it was the first company to unlock the electrification of vehicles. And while being not the perfect solution yet, that was unlocking capital towards climate impact through
Hmm.
one organization. And so what's next to me? That's what that inspires. What can we do now? How can we improve battery storage? How can we improve mining practices? What else can we electrify? It should open doors, and right now you kind of have to choose, are you pro Tesla or against Tesla? And
Yeah.
I think that's not the conversation.
Yeah, man. I'm thinking about like what advice you would give to the protesters at this point around what they're doing. And gosh, because it's a challenging situation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of I've seen on LinkedIn and places, people say, if you have a Tesla, you should sell it, take the loss, and, leave it be. And that's a lot of privilege,
Yeah.
and that's an unrealistic expectation of everyone. And
Hmm.
so, and they're still driving an electric vehicle. And again, I'm not going to say like the electric vehicles are the end all be all, but it's a good example of innovation towards progress. And
Right.
so I would say, what are some ways that you can help support improvements? So if that means highlighting another manufacturer that has an equally
Right.
advanced product, what are some of the improvements that could occur internally inside of Tesla? If I worked for Tesla, I'd be either terrified or actively looking for another job. I
Yeah.
wouldn't really be motivated on trying to inspire positive change within this organization. I would either be abandoning ship or just very scared.
Yeah.
So,
I'd be really scared.
yeah. Yeah. So I would be trying to just come to every conversation with curiosity, asking why there's a certain belief, what could be done, what's the real problem, really dissecting what we're actually talking about
Hmm.
versus, just coming at things with anger and division.
Yeah. Down the road from me, 45 minutes is the Rivian factory here in Illinois. And that's it. Hey, if you don't like Tesla, per your example, head over to Rivian. Don't burn a bunch of cars. Although, you know, too late for that. But
Yeah. Well, and I mean, every company's had a scandal. Rivian's had a scandal with some of their leadership. And I I think we have to really step back on that. Everyone has had some sort of controversial situation. Myself,
Mhm.
you seem perfect, but maybe something's happened in your life,
Oh, thank you.
but I think we all have to realize that we can't operate in this space if we are putting unrealistic
Yeah.
expectations on people or if we're putting just wide umbrellas over
Hmm.
everything. And that isn't true.
I find like what you're saying to be true and also a bit optimistic. And so I'm wondering, how do we, what's a healthy relationship then with either feeling apathetic or grief about what's happening out there in the climate world? And it's possible like that grief is leading to these fights internally.
Yeah, I would first say acknowledge it. It's really important to acknowledge grief and explore it, see what's underneath it, write it down, really get it allow for it to kind of stand separate from you so that you can actually see it and explore the depths of it. And I don't think grief goes away,
No.
but once you acknowledge it, you can see it, you can tackle it, you can understand when it's bigger and smaller and the timing that's associated with it. And so whether you feel angry or you want to cry or you want to shut down, all of that is very relevant. But then I would then ask, what's what's the missed opportunity if we allow for it to consume us
Right.
rather than use it to direct us in the right way?
Yeah, that's great advice. I had been talking to other people this season about this exact same question, and I told them too about my journey through it, and just realizing that I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of writing, like you said, and then it just sort of there's no point in staying there in that point because I care so much about it, so I have to fight for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I the best therapists are the ones that stay quiet while you just blab on and then you can actually come up to your own conclusion yourself. Yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge that. And I mean, I know wildfire smoke is always going to have a detrimental anxiety. It overcomes me when
Mm,
I hear about it, see it, smell it, I imagine it, all of that
yeah.
can trigger me, and I know that about myself, and so I can support myself in the summertime in the Pacific Northwest, and then I can also try to figure out ways that I can use that fear and grief to then help me understand where I can put my time and resources to help prevent that or make it work and not make it worse, make it better.
And I know from, the fact that I wrote a book that writing a book is a big journey, and I'm curious for you as you're now discussing all the frameworks and details from the book with others, what's changed for you along the way, and what have you learned or discovered by talking through, cancel culture and climate with all the people you do?
I think what's changed the most is that I knew that other people recognized this problem, but I thought when I was going to first start writing about it that I was going to be unlocking something in every conversation that I had. Like, hey, did you know that this is a problem and we're all participating in it? And I thought I was going to be spending so much time on the education piece of this problem. And after all the research and conversations and case studies, everyone's very much so aware of this problem. And everyone I've talked to wants to solve it. And so then I
Well,
started to kinda understand, well, it's not about, is this a problem or not? It's how can I address it effectively and in a way that is authentic to me? And so that's where I then started crafting the frameworks and the messaging so that I could provide the tools, not necessarily the research to identify the problem. It's more how do we navigate our way out of it? And so that was new for me. I thought I would be, "Did you know?" I thought that that was gonna be more of the impetus of the book, and then it ended up being more about, "Here's how we can address it and do something about it."
we'll be back after this message. The Sustainability X magazine's Global 50 Women in Sustainability Awards for 2025 is now open for nominations. And we're looking for women who aren't just talking change, they're leading it. From fighting for climate justice to breaking down barriers in business, policy, and community, these awards honor women driving bold, intersectional, and systemic impact around the world. Do you know a woman who's shaking up the status quo? Nominate her. Let's make sure the world sees her, hears her, and learns from her. So go to sustainabilityx.co/awards That's sustainabilityx.co/awards and submit your nomination today. Nominations close May 16th, 2025. Because sustainability without women isn't sustainability at all. Have you run into anyone where just none of your strategies worked? It was just an impossible task.
I have yes and no. I mean, I'm pretty good at changing language. That's been really helpful for me. So if someone just with me having climate in the book, that can
Yeah, it's like a
automatically
trigger for some people.
yeah, and then cancel culture too.
One big trigger, yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah, I'm just, like, upsetting people immediately. And then it can also I've had cancel culture be very much so misunderstood. So, like, it's been, interesting to have that be the title, but I have really been comfortable with changing my language. So, if global warming and climate change isn't working, pollution typically does. So, I think that it's been fairly easy to just not be in my own ego and wanting to put facts on top of other people, and that's really helped. I will say with very, knowledgeable climate activists, that can tend to be a bit challenging just because there's so much passion and anger built in, and
Mhm.
so, that's been the most challenging conversations, I would say, but then once you kinda let the steam out, they're really just looking for help, and
Mhm.
so I've tried to really just open those conversations with empathy.
So, like a therapist, you're listening a lot in those situations.
Yeah, yeah, yes, definitely a lot of listening and just hearing people what they're upset about and what's going on, and then just trying to figure out, well, how can I help?
I see you do workshops. Do you also do like one-on-one sessions with folks so that you can help them be more empathetic and and teach them the way forward?
I've joked about how my second book is gonna be the unlicensed climate
Yeah.
therapist.
Sounds like you're
Um,
cut out for it.
yeah, I really enjoy it. I was a psych major when I first went to college, and so I do find it fun, and I think it's really important. I have had a lot of one-on-ones in the Q&A of workshops. That's been primarily when I people share personal experiences, they ask questions, and so usually I try to focus not on, well, this is what I think you should do. It's more, let's break down the question itself and the reason why you're even asking it. And so then I'm helping that comfort level with curiosity, and that's been my main tactic.
Mm.
Just I don't know everything, and so I don't have every answer,
Yeah.
but what I can do is help explore the question so that we can all come up with an answer either together or they can come up with it themselves.
Do you have like a favorite success story from all your efforts and work?
Well, that individual that was pretty disappointed with their scope of work and being responsible for the climate strategy, that was definitely one. I think I think it's been really it's been interesting to meet people that have different political ideologies, but still are very concerned about climate change.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
kind of
really
angling for there in this question. Yeah.
yeah, that's been really interesting, and so if someone was like I mean, I already aired out a bunch of dirty laundry on this conversation anyway, so if someone was like, "I voted for Trump and I'm a climate activist," at first, I would want to say something back. And instead of saying a statement back, I've really focused on a question and asking, well, what made you by being a climate activist and voting for Trump, was that a challenge for you? And
Mm,
then now you
that's
get to find
good.
out more.
Yeah, that's
And
really good.
so, yeah, it really those conversations have been really helpful for me. And so that's the more selfish answer, I guess. But for me, it's really helped me understand why we are where we are and how we could potentially, that to me is an engagement problem. And so, how can we engage more people?
But your initial reaction would have been to say like, "What the fuck were you thinking?" But instead, something clicked and you said,
Yeah. I mean, if you wanna take one piece of advice from this entire conversation, if someone says a statement to you, don't respond with a statement, respond with a question. And if you can at least try to do that as much as possible, you're going to see a lot of connection and growth.
"Yeah, that's really good advice." That's gonna take a while, I think, for a lot of people because emotion gets supercharged in this area, and we're all really passionate about it, and it's hard to eliminate that emotion, and I'm thinking about Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, another amazing book besides yours to read about this second order that the brain has in terms of responding with emotion and responding with some sort of logic. And it's really tough sometimes to get your brain to go, "No, don't get mad."
Yeah. Yeah, and especially if you're not trying to work on that, it's almost impossible.
Mhm.
So, yes, I definitely agree with that. I mean, we're such social beings, but we weren't born with the skills to communicate. So it's like we're born to do it, but not necessarily be good at it. And so it takes practice.
In the first chapter of your book, Cancel Culture and Climate, you mentioned 6 warring camps in the climate space, and you kinda touched upon some personas. One of the, uh, camps is the reserved. I think that's what you, called it. And do you think it's as important to engage and get participation from that group versus a different group? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. So there was a study done that was exploring various social media platforms and created these personas based on how they are on the platform, how they engage with the climate movement. And so the reserved are those that are unengaged, they're not part of the climate movement either
Yeah.
because they feel as if it's too large for them to address it or they're a bit skeptical. And so it represents on social and in the study, it was about 5% of people. And so Catherine Hayhoe talks about this a lot. That's another individual that I
She's
would,
fantastic. I love her.
yeah, I would love to meet her and just say like, "Hello." Yes.
And then walk away.
Uh, yeah, and she's like, "Well, that was weird." But yes, I she talks about how there's this perception that, we've got like the climate activists and the climate deniers, and there are these two big camps, and that's what it is. But really what it is it's a climate concerned individual that is not active. And so how can we actually get that individual active in the space? And so if they're reserved, they don't see themselves in the movement. They don't think they have the ability to create change. They think it's someone else's responsibility, and so it's all these kinda, "I'm not a part of this" types of reasonings, and so if we can actually figure out ways to make them feel actually a part of it, then that then moves them from a reserve to, one of the other groups.
You can disagree with me on this. We can find common ground either way, but I personally feel like that group is one of, if not the most important groups in society to engage around climate.
Yeah, it's such a small portion that is a climate denier, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
really
little.
it's so it's so small, and I mean, we are seeing the very extreme beliefs on all sides. They're the loudest ones, and
They
there's
are.
so much in the middle.
they got some news platforms to help them, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, there's also, I guess, I feel like that particular group, the reserved group, are like not joiners anyways, and they have, political affiliations that aren't clear, and them being engaged would make it just a huge difference.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows what the personal obstacles that they've told themselves are? If we ask with curiosity, we could actually find out that they think that they're not smart enough to be a part of it. They're not rich enough. There's all of these things that they think about themselves that makes them not part of the movement, and that simply isn't the case. That's not true. And so it's kind of like a imposter syndrome, really. I mean, you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to help people feel like they are part of it because we all live it every day. And so it's just how much we actually acknowledge that. And so if we can kind of try to change the narrative a bit and make it more inclusive.
Well, you were on another podcast, the Climate Curious podcast, a few months ago, and you were talking about the open conversations. And I'm curious about how you feel like that can be applied, because we hopefully all of us work, and how we can apply that to where we work and encourage, maybe you're working on the system from within, where on your job. Do you have some thoughts about that or strategies that you think would work really well?
Yeah, it's all about understanding and not necessarily persuading. So there is if you work for a company and you want to see said company make a choice that is pushing the movement forward, then what I would first want to know is what is causing that choice to not be made. And so maybe it's risk mitigation, maybe it's the directive of the C-suite, maybe it's all whatever it might be, find out what that is, and then start to talk about it and figure out ways that this movement also aligns with the strategy of the company because
Mhm.
cost savings, employee morale, employee and retention, positive PR and marketing, you know, customer loyalty, all of these things can be attached with the movement. And so it's really just being able to speak to that. So if you're talking to the CFO, you're going to speak about the climate movement and how your company should engage in climate in one way. Whereas if you're talking to marketing or HR or, it's all going to be slightly different on how it helps them achieve their goals.
You gotta speak their language, right? Like if you're talking to CFO, you maybe you're talking about money, and marketing is PR. What's law? Like risk management, not getting sued. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all about whatever their concerns are, or whatever their goals are. What's the carrot and what's the stick, and just figuring out how climate falls in that movement, in that goal.
Yeah, I like the idea of what you said about not trying to persuade, but understand. And I've seen that go not even in the climate movement, but any sort of thing, personally or as a parent, for instance, trying to persuade my daughter to do something, it's not going to happen as she's 15 years old. So it's more about understanding what is going on with her and why she wouldn't have thought to do it in the first place. See, I'm getting it. I'm understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, when I first wrote the book, I had so much about unresolved trauma, and there was a lot of emotional aspects in the
Sounds like
book.
it.
And then I
Yeah.
decided to somewhat stay in my lane. And the goal of the book is to have people have better climate conversations. But I do think that the frameworks and just the conversation itself can really be applied to relationships. And so my goal in the book is to have more engagement in this movement, but I think that it spans all types of relationship building and progress.
What would you like to see happen from the publishing of your book?
Oh, wow. But I mean, I would love to see someone really controversial read it and say,
Ooh,
"It really made me think."
that'd
That
be great. Yeah.
yeah.
You have a person
Um,
in mind in particular
there's a couple.
for names?
Yeah. Yes. There are a few that I think would be really it would be really cool to have them see themselves in the book.
You gotta mail
And
it to them. You gotta mail it to them.
right. Well, okay, if we're gonna name drop again, ExxonMobil CEO said he was critical of Trump talking about removing the IRA. And so having the CEO of ExxonMobil then talk about how keeping the IRA would be beneficial, that to me is a surprising opportunity for conversation. And
And yeah,
so,
it is.
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
Inflation Reduction Act, not what was the Irish,
Oh,
yeah,
yes. Current, not
current
80s or
yeah, okay. That yeah, I saw that kind of quickly in the news, and I was happy to have seen that.
yeah. And there might be some profit goals that
Mm,
are in there. And so but great. So, to me, I'm like, "What is that? And what are those profit goals? Where does this entity that's often canceled all the time, where does this entity see itself in this very innovative, forward-thinking, progressive climate regulation? And so what's in between? How can we close the gap?" That's where my head goes when I start to see kind of these, different sharings of what people actually believe.
yeah, I'm sure he's seeing, like, the numbers too, like, solar is still is still cheaper than coal, right? There's renewable energy is still being installed at a very high rate, and that's not something Exxon is involved with, but they could be.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and I love that. Let's
Yeah,
figure out where the gaps are.
yeah. Well, running out of time here, and I got one more question for you. And as you mentioned education earlier in the conversation, I'm curious about your thoughts on how or what specifically, what crucial climate topics or ways to engage with it should be taught to kids earlier on. Because I see it's harder to teach old dogs new tricks, and it's good to get them while they're just learning everything.
Yeah, I would think the best thing to help teach kids, younger kids, like, still in grade school, I
Mhm.
would think about ways to better show empathy and conversation. That would be a skill that I think is really impactful in all
Empathy.
facets of life. And then as we kinda grow and evolve, I would love to help people understand the nuance of behavioral change and the nuance of these types of movements. Being comfortable with nuance, I think, is something that not all of us have, and so being able to really create more comfort levels in the gray is a skill that I think would allow for a lot of resiliency and a lot of collaboration. And to use, like, an actual framework, I love the B Corp movement. That's
Yeah, me
a
too.
yeah. Also some cancel culture in there, so that's
Yeah.
we can talk about that next time. But the B Corp movement is a great view of imperfection because you get your scores based on all of these different areas of your business, but overall, you're pushing progress forward. And so you have all of these various groups and initiatives within a company, whether it's climate or community or employee engagement, all of these different things on how you're being measured. But overall, you can be pushing progress and purposefulness in business forward. And so that to me shows a holistic way of viewing impact
Mhm.
and makes it possible. And then the amount of B Corps that survived catastrophic time periods. I mean, look at the pandemic, how many companies closed, and the B Corp movement stayed strong and actually grew. And so that to me is proving that that type of holistic view of it's not perfect, but it's progressive and it's moving forward. That's what we should see more of.
Yeah, I agree. And the whole empathy piece, I think kids are very empathetic. They just might not know that they are. They need to be maybe cheered on to continue it, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, they're different than you or you're different than them, and what is how could that be fun?
Yeah.
And really coming to that I think we're not comfortable with differences all the time, and if we can
Yeah.
create a society where we're comfortable with being different and not having to label it or figuring out how we're different, just being comfortable with that we are, I think that that would inspire so much positivity.
And if you ask questions, then you'll know.
Yes. Circle back.
Yes. Well, thank you, Jenny Morgan. It's been a wonderful time, maybe an hour or so spent with you. Tell us again the name of your book and where we can find you online.
So it's cancel culture and climate, and I have a website, cancelcultureandclimate.com. It's in some local bookstores, it's on Amazon. So there's lots of ways that you can get it. I can ship it to you. So yeah, it's been really fun. I want to hear everyone's feedback and how it's working, what's not working. That's the only way that we can keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jenny. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We want to hear from you. What did you take away from this discussion? Email us at climifypodcast@gmail.com or connect with us on Instagram at climifypodcast. We would love to read your inspirational stories on the show in upcoming episodes. This program is produced by Jackie Himmel, Bhavna Bhavani Shankar, and Adam Java. A big shout out to our new designer this season, Tyler Mayfield, and our social media strategist, Brianna Reggioni. Sound engineering and editing by me, Eric Benson. A special thanks to Mark O'Brien at The Climate Designers. You can find design prompts and more information on all of our guests this season at climateDesigners.org/edu/Climify and on Instagram and LinkedIn at Climify Podcast. If you enjoy the work we all do here and you have a spare minute or two, we would truly appreciate it if you left a rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. The more folks reviewing our program, the higher the algorithm pushes us up in the search results. And in turn, the more likely we all could learn how to become climate designers.